Okay. This card is so bad. First of all, 4-cost 4/2 is not good stats. Now it has this neat little ability. If this card was a gravestone, I guess this is the theme of the crazy classes. All the gravestone cards should not be gravestones, and all the not gravestones should be gravestones. What's going on, everybody? This is Fry. So today we are doing yet another tier list. Today we are doing the crazy class. This is of course by popular demand from the comment section of past tier list videos. So if you want to have some say in terms of which tier list, which class I will do next, make sure you leave that in the comments section below in the video on YouTube. All right, we're just gonna get right into it and start with Backup Dancer. Typically, the little 1/1 tokens, I might actually do something I've never done in any of the other tier lists to this point. I'm not actually going to be putting this in F tier. I'm going to be putting this in D. And the reason is because of Backup Dancer is very unlike the other little 1/1 tokens like Small Nut and like Cardboard Robot Zombie and stuff like that, because it does have Dancing Mustache synergy. I'm not going to give it much for Mustache because you really don't want to be playing this together, let's say, with your Mustache Waxer, because again, it's just a little 1/1. This is a very, very bad tempo card, 1-cost 1/1 of stats, but it does have a little bit of that dancing synergy, and I think only for budget players, this actually could be included in a deck that you are using Flamenco as a finisher. And again, you're never going to really want to play Backup Dancer onto the field unless you just need a little bit of extra push to make that Flamenco do 1 extra damage. Again, if you're not a budget player, you're always going to be running Unlife for the Party. You're going to have options like Disco Naut, which is again obviously always going to be better than Backup Dancer if you have a more advanced collection. But for just the most budget version of the game, I wouldn't be upset seeing Backup Dancer if it's being used correctly and only being played to combo with Flamenco. And for that reason, I'm going to do the unprecedented step of putting Backup Dancer actually in D tier, because it does have a use. It's not completely and utterly useless. Now, moving right along is to Bungee Plumber. This is one of the most underrated cards in the entire game, and it is actually one of the best early game control cards in the entire game. This for me is just easy S tier. There is almost no crazy deck that you don't want to have a few Bungee Plumbers in, because again, this basically takes out anything the opponent plays on turn 1. I know there's going to be some exceptions, but usually those cards are not very good plants that have more than 2 health on turn 1. This is going to be useful in finishing off even bigger plants. Very often, a big plant with a lot of health will make a good trade and have a couple health left, and Bungee Plumber will finish it. This is a really good answer to amphibious minions, which again, for the most part, at least in the first 3 turns, usually die to 2 damage. Even a lot of 3-cost, like very powerful, like 2-cost, 2 or even 3-cost plans. Well, let's say 2-cost plans. A lot of them will die to Bungee Plumber. Obviously, Triceratops and Black Eyed Pea and Juggernaut are not. But if you just start even getting to your basic cards that, let's say, have 3 attack and 2 health, like Fireweed, there's really a lot of examples of cards of actual decent, especially aggro cards like Fireweed, and notably a very good card in the solar class, which is Apple Saucer. Where are you, Apple Saucer? These cards will, again, die to a 1-cost card is able to answer a lot of very, very good 2-cost cards in this game. And that's why Bungee Plumber, again, is one of the best cards. It seriously is one of the best cards in the game. This also, Bungee Plumber, it didn't even need this to be one of the best cards in the game. It can also do 2 damage to your opponent's face, which, again, if they have 2 health left, you just Bungee Plumber in the face and win. How often does that happen? But there's even more useful is if they have a full block meter and you want to set up a big chunk of damage from one of your strong zombies, Bungee Plumber is this perfect, just cheap way of proccing their block, go directly to face, and then you have an empty block meter and you can do whatever you want to them. Absolutely fantastic card. So underrated. So underrated. People don't ever think of this common card as being seriously one of the best value cards in the entire game. Easy S tier. We're going to move right along. All right, here's Disco Naut. Disco Naut has gone under a lot of changes over the years. It's so interesting how this icon is actually up to date. As you can see, it says it's a 2-1. This used to be a 2-2, which again had better stats, dies less, you know, takes a little bit more resources to kill it, but much more importantly, this used to say zombies with 3 or less have bullseye, and now it says zombies with 2 or less have bullseye. This has just been nerfed basically to extinction. Yeah, there is going to be a couple of cool synergies. For example, if you go and you play it, let's say with Disco Dance Floor, then that dance floor, the overshoot will now be bullseye. This isn't even that great of a card. We'll get to that later. This does, most of all, the biggest nerf, it just does not work with Flamenco anymore. This used to make Flamenco into a bullseye card, which just negates like the block meter factor out of dancing decks, and now it just it does not even affect Flamenco. It doesn't even affect Headhunter. This used to work if you did not evolve Dancing Evolution, the Headhunter. This would have made all these bullseye anyway. Does not work with that. You have almost no business ever running this in a non-dancing deck, and even in dancing decks, it's not necessary. Now, I do use this sometimes in dancing decks. I recently made one it was actually a ramp dance deck that will eventually be on the Frame Up gaming channel. That this was, again, it was useful, so I'm not going to say it's in completely garbage tier. I'm just going to put this in C because, again, it has a couple uses and a couple decks, but typically you don't want this. This really has no business being in a lot of decks. All right, we're going to move on to Grave Robber. This is a card that is so misunderstood. The main thing you got to know about this card is a 1-cost 2/2 bullseye. Forget about all the abilities, all the synergy. That is the main thing in this card, and that actually makes it a very good aggro card. 1-cost 2/2 is standard, and then you add bullseye. Like, you can make an argument that 2 bullseye is actually better for an aggro deck than 3 damage, which is not bullseye. Like, 1 damage bullseye makes up for 1 damage difference, meaning this is basically a 1-cost equivalent to a 3/2, which is just a ridiculously good average aggro card. If anything, it could be that bullseye 2 damage. I'd actually rather have that than 3 damage, not bullseye. Okay, so let's get into the synergies. Again, they do have some uses. This gets 1 whenever a zombie is revealed from a gravestone. People make the huge mistake of only putting Grave Robber only in gravestone decks. It's not good in any other deck, which could not be further from the truth. This is a great addition in every aggro deck. Notably, the actual deck that I run this in that does not have any gravestones in it actually is the Mustache Waxer with Professor Brainstorm. Again, just look it up on the Frame Up channel. It's called Professor Mustache deck. I'll probably bring that back in the live streams. And if you play this on turn 2 together with like another Mustache Waxer and Grave Robbers, which again does have Mustache synergy, so it'll give you, besides for being a great aggro card, it gives you the extra brain with the Mustache Waxer. Then you can play Bungee Plumbers, let's say, to even get more brains because that is a mustache. Didn't even talk about Bungee Plumber's mustache synergy. Doesn't need that. This also is very good with Pirate. So again, Pirate, this together with Swashbuckler in an Infinity Pirate deck, which Infinity is the best Pirate hero because of Grave Robber and because of Conman. This will definitely, first of all, again, it gets benefit from the Swashbuckler because every time it hits face, it'll grow because of this ability. But Swashbuckler and Flameface are also Gravestone. So again, that does add a little bit of extra attack. It's actually a really, really fantastic card. Grave Robber, it's such an important part of a lot of decks, and for that reason, I'm going to put it, it's not like the top tier, the total broken S carry, but I'm going to give that a solid A. It is a really, really good card. All right, here's Loose Cannon. Loose Cannon is not a good card. It seems like it does a lot of damage. You say, Fry, it's a 1 cost, 3 attack, 1 health, so that's pretty good stats for an aggro card. Plus 2 of those damage is overshooting. And there's 2 problems. First of all, it only has 1 health, so it's so easy to answer. But second of all, if you play this dry in the field and the opponent ignore, the best thing they could probably do is completely ignore this card, because the 1 attack and the 2 overshoot not being bullseye, it charges your opponent's block meter so much. It gives them free superpowers, which by the way, they can use to either remove Loose Cannon or remove an actual good card that you're playing on the field. It also just messes up a lot of times you're trying to do a little bit of a bigger chunk of damage than 1 or 2. Pinging your opponent's block meter for 1 non-bullseye is a really, really bad thing to do in this game. This really pings it again for 2 and 1. It really messes up aggro. This is not a good aggro card. It's really not good in any deck. It's not a good imp synergy. There's a lot better 1 cost imp, a lot better 1 cost imps than this. I'm gonna be putting this in. I'll put it in D tier. I'm not gonna say it's the worst card. Every once in a while, again, I wonder what deck you actually run Loose Cannon. Don't say run Loose Cannon, by the way, together with Disco Knot, because cards that are only good when combined with other cards are typically going to be bad, unless they're going to finish off the opponent. The upside is not very good, and again, they can easily clear both of these off the field very easily. I'll put this in D tier. I would almost put this in F. Is there any actual good deck for Loose Cannon? Maybe there's not. I'm just putting it in F. It's a bad card. Screw it. I'm putting it in F. I could have put it in D, but I'm actually putting it in F just to emphasize in how flawed of a card Loose Cannon really is. Keep it going. We're going to go with Mystery Eggs. Mystery Egg is decent. So first of all, this is a 1-cost card that on average turns into a 1.5 cost card. So that's the upside. The problem is that this also turns into a lot of useless 0-cost cards. Because again, if you're looking at Mustache Waxer or Cardboard Robot Zombie or, you know, just little sports zombie, there's a lot of really, really bad 1-drops that you wouldn't run in a deck. I mean, there's a lot of 1-drops that are just like D or lower tier that you don't want to run. And of course, it has a risk of turning into a lot of those. So the upsides of this is when you combo with certain cards, like Unlife for the Party. Very, very good combo with Egg, because this actually creates 2 minions. One when you play it, and then one when it hatches, it'll buff your Unlife twice. This also works pretty well with with Professor Brainstorm combined with Nebula. It's just a neat little combo. When you play Egg into it, it'll give you 2 brains. And then when it hatches, it gives you an extra 2 brains. So it really gives you 3 extra brains that turn. You can check that combo out in a deck that is called Egg Leap Rising. That is on Prime Up Gaming. Very cool way to ramp up to Bad Moon Rising. With that. Again, even with Transformation Station, for example, if this does turn into a 2-cost card, even a bad 2-cost card, it just makes you're able to get that 3-cost card easier, because again, you only spent 1 on this. This is, again, it's a decent card. It's not going to be one of the greatest in the game. I'm just going to give it a solid B tier because it does actually legitimately have some pretty good uses in the game. Moving right along to Quick Draw Conman. Okay, first of all, this card used to be a 1/4. The guys, this used to be a 1/4. This card is almost broken as is. I don't think this needs another nerf. I really don't think this is overpowered. This is like so easy S tier. This card used to have 4 health. I'm almost just thinking about this seriously. Like, what? How did that happen? Thankfully, they nerfed it down to 3 health. This is so hard to answer. There's almost no 1-cost plants that do 3 damage. It's Bonk Choi and Primal Potato Mine and like the Meteor superpower of Spidao and maybe Spidao's ultimate ability. Like, it's so few answers to this. Even like Weed Whack does not remove the problem, because this is going to keep doing that 1 bullseye. The bullseye is the key. This does so much damage. It combines anytime your opponent draws a card. So it gives them a penalty for drawing cards. It can feed cards to your opponent's hand using cards like Exploding Fruitcake, which is just absolutely amazing. And it does all the extra damage. Just for a 1-cost card, this is just such ridiculous value. Forget about the fact that it's a pirate. So then you can stick this again in Infinity Pirate decks. You can find those on YouTube. And then this starts growing every single time. Every single time if you have Swashbuckler on the field, you also have Strike Through. With Captain Flameface. This card at 4 health. I'm sorry. I'm just having a little easy S tier. Let's just go right on to the next card. Tennis Champ. When played, this gets 3 extra attack this turn. So this looks like a good aggro card, because again, it does 4 damage for a 1-cost card. But again, after it does that initial 4 damage, even if they don't have an answer, which it has only 1 health, so it's very easy to answer, it'll then do 1 damage non-bullseye to your opponent, which just makes this so flawed. Really, really bad. I would have made this actually be only get 2 extra and give it bullseye, and then the 1 is still just bullseye damage. I think that would actually be a really decent card just to make this into a bullseye and a little less powerful. You're almost never going to use this in any deck, really, not even in sports decks. There's so many better sports cards. Like Arm Wrestler is just an incredibly better card. I'm going to put this in F tier because there's almost no business. I guess we did have that deck. We did have a deck which was using this as a 1-turn kill. Now I'm just remembering, you can find this a long time ago on the Prime Up channel. It was called OTK Tennis Zombie, and we actually put this on the field, stuck some buffs onto it, and did bonus attacks. It was a really efficient way of causing a 1-turn kill So because it was kind of useful in just one deck, I'll actually give it the merit putting in D tier. I think in that deck it was actually really good. Again, you can look that up on YouTube if you want to see the deck list. I would almost even put it in C because it was part of a high tier. It wasn't even the best deck in the game. I'll put it in D. It's good in one deck and a piece of trash garbage otherwise. Keep it going. Trapper Territory is actually an extremely good environment just based on the merit that it costs 1, which means the low cost zombie environments are so important because you only have to leave over 1 brain in order to be able to play around the plants playing their own environment. So if you're against Cycle Cap or any kind of like ramp decks, really any deck that's going to have environment, even an opponent that's going to play Spikeweed Sector to counter your minions, Trapper Territory is a quick answer. I do include 2 of these in the Valk Trickster hybrid deck just to, not because it really helps that much. Again, it is a little bit of a control card. Sometimes 1 damage really does make a difference in the ground lane, but mostly just to play around the opponent's environments and cover them. Even if you had a 1-cost card that just said destroy your opponent's environment on the field, that would be actually a pretty decent card. This not only does that, but it also creates an advantage to you because, again, it will be damaging everything in that environment. So I'm going to give this a solid A tier. Not really that much synergy that this is going to have. Gourmet synergy. But it's just really a solid drop. If you just need environments, it's really cheap card too. I mean, this is an uncommon. I mean, really, this if you don't have a good synergy environment, this is easy to include in basically any deck. I'll put that in A tier. All right, here's On Life of the Party. So On Life of the Party is a card I've actually sort of just in recent months been actually using.
500 viewers Pog this week so far has been great for views.
Thank you so much. That is Mata Hiwu, and thank you again to Mata Hiwu for putting together these deck lists with all the these tier lists. I mean, with all the icons. Really appreciate that. Just saves me a lot of time. And thank you so much to Bottom Less Room. Thank you. Welcome to the Primely with the paid sub tier 1. Really appreciate it. All right, so we got On Life of the Party. I used to consider this a budget-only card, and recently, if you want to see the new versions of Professor Brainstorm, this has been useful. This is useful in dancing decks. Again, it's a 1-cost zombie that really, again, sometimes really gets out of control, especially when you combine it with a lot of eggs and cards like in Professor Brainstorm, we actually combine it with Interdimensional Zombie, which, again, is a 1-cost card that will turn into 2 minions if played correctly in the right combos, so that will buff the On Life of the Party a lot, really to a 4/4. If done correctly. This is, again, it's useful in dancing decks. Pretty solid card. I'm not going to say it just like rely on this for Swarm decks. Again, in its first stage, it really does get removed easily. This is a good card to combine with Infinity Clones, Infinity Superpower, or with the Superpower Dance Off that Professor Brainstorm and Electric Boogaloo have. Because again, that will create 2 minions, which buffs this twice. I'm just going to give it a solid B tier. Because it is useful in a lot of decks, not one of the best cards in the game, has some weaknesses, and it's fine. All right. What am I going to do with Aerobics Instructor? Probably if I would have made this tier list last week, I would have put Aerobics Instructor down in D tier. And I'll tell you the reason why I would have done that, and also the reason why I've actually changed my mind about Aerobics Instructor. And it's a simple thing about understanding the way PvZ Heroes works. If you're going to rely on Aerobics Instructor as your engine of your deck, it's the way you're going to win. It's actually not a very good card because, again, it looks like it has a lot of synergy by all dancing zombies get +2 attack. So if this stays alive, you can get a lot of value. Even itself, it will be a 2-cost 4/3, even if it doesn't buff anything else. But the problem is that it has this huge if, and that is if it survives. And Aerobics Instructor as a 2-cost dry zombie. So in order to play this on 2, you just gotta play it on the field and let the opponent respond to it. This will almost always die on turn 2. It dies to Berry Blast. It dies to any plant that does 3 attack, that has 3 attack will answer this card. And 1 or 2 cost cards that have 3 attack, again, 2 cost cards that have 3 attack, there's so many answers. So the reason why I would have put this in a very low tier is because if you're trying to build a dancing synergy deck around this and use this to as your part of your win condition of getting high attack guys, it really is not worth it. It also doesn't buff health at all. And one of the most important parts of Swarm decks is not getting field clear. The reason why Pineclone, for example, is a better card than Cro-Magnolia. This does not actually address the main weakness of your fast zoo, you know, swarm dance decks, is that they die very easily to small removal and to field clear. It doesn't address that problem at all. There's another completely different use of aerobics instructor, which I really discovered again in the video, which is called the ramp dance deck. I will try to upload that as quickly as possible to YouTube so you guys can reference that for this card and for other cards in this class. And that is, if you have to look at it completely the opposite. If you play aerobics instructor on the field on turn 2, the plants have to answer. They have to speak. Again, there's very few 1-cost cards. Only Primal, Potato Mine, and Bonk Choy that can really answer this. They're going to have to spend their entire turn 2 answering this. So essentially, aerobics instructor is a control card. I know this is a weird concept. It's going to be very similar to, and when I do the Beastie class, I'm going to explain this about Cheese Cutter, that when you play this on the field on turn 1, your opponent has to spend their entire turn 1 answering this, and if they don't, you get really, really far ahead. Because this will give you a very strong tempo. Gourmet cards are typically very good tempo cards, which cost less. It will really give you a huge advantage if they don't answer it, so it forces them. You can really use aerobics instructor in a similar way. And again, if they don't answer this, then now you have a 4-3 on the field the next turn. They're going to be in trouble very quickly if they decide not to answer this. It's such a smart way. Seaman was the one who actually sort of made me realize how you can use dry zombies that grow or that give you a lot of tempo as control cards. For that reason, I'm going to put this. I don't think that's the best way of controlling. There are better 2-cost control cards, especially in this class, like Fruitcake.
Can't wait until I get S tier for
I'm going to put this as an actually solid C. I almost could put this as B if I discover some more decks besides for, again, the ramp dance that this is going to be a good control card in. This also, again, had a second use in that deck in terms of the ramp. You can check out that deck itself. I probably would put this in B. Right now, I'm going to stick this in C, and it could be that as I use this card more, after sort of very recently having making this discovery how to use this as a control card, I actually will maybe put this in a higher tier. But I'm going to put it in a solid C for now, open-minded for it being a B card. All right. That was a long explanation. Let's go on to Barrel of Deadbeards. This is, again, this has a lot of uses. The pirate synergy is almost never useful. This should probably never be in your Infinity Pirate deck because, again, it doesn't do any damage. So it doesn't have any synergy with your Swashbuckler or with your Flame Face until it pops out of the Deadbeard. So in terms of a tempo card, it's really not that good. This is mostly going to be used as a control card. Usually you don't want dry zombies controlling, but this does give you a lot of value because, again, it explodes. It does 1 damage to the guy in front of it. Then it does 4 damage to the guy in front of it. So it really does 5 damage for a 2-cost card, which is ridiculous. Plus it splashes to other lanes. This can also activate some of your other cards that rely on getting splashed in order to be good. For example, we're going to have some cards later that whenever they take 1 damage, they'll throw a Garg around the field, throw an egg, maybe we'll splash again. So it definitely is useful with that. The most notable synergy with this card, Barrel of Deadbeards, is actually with Valkyrie, because Valkyrie, this will be a 2-cost card that actually counts as 2 minions. So if you stick this in front of your opponents, it's going to control stall for time, which is how you want to activate Valkyrie. I'll get to this later. But again, it also is 2 minions, so it's actually a very important part of Valk Trickster Hybrid, because you really, since you need both be a lot of tricks and a lot of minions, having 1 card slot that makes 2 minions is just so valuable. And usually you want to either use this together with Teleport, because teleporting in front of a minion is fine. You can also stick this on the field, Barrel of Deadbeards, on the right side of the field, and then when they play another minion, stick a second Barrel of Deadbeards in front of that. That will make this one explode and actually attack for 4 damage that turn. It's a really cool combo. So teleport this in or use it together with Final Mission. It could be, again, I said don't use this in a pirate deck. Maybe there will be a good pirate deck where you activate your Barrel of Deadbeards with Final Mission. I think it is still might be a little too slow because, again, it also will be doing a little damage to your other pirates, which in a tempo deck, you don't want your cards taking that much damage. All right. So Barrel of Deadbeards, got to put this on the list. I think because it's such a solid part of so many decks. I could put this in B or put it in A. I'm gonna put it in like a low A tier because again, it is actually it's not useful in a ton of decks, but it is very useful in my opinion, the best deck in the game, which is Valk Trickster Hybrid, and that will convince me to put this in low A tier. You don't need to have this, but you kind of do need to have this Valk Trickster Hybrid in order for it to work. All right, moving right along. We are going to do Kanga. Kanga is not, it's not a reliable control card because again, 1 damage does not control that many plants. It's just a 2/2. It does have this dancing synergy, which there's usually a lot better, cheaper dancing cards, like 1 cost are usually going to be better. You almost never find any. Every once in a while, again, they play like Admiral Navy Beam. This is a good counter to it because again, it can ping the guy in the water, but it doesn't actually, as a control card, which is what this is, or as a dancing synergy card, it really is almost completely useless. I'm not going to say put it in F, but I will put it in D because I think this is maybe good for budget players, but I'm really realistically not going to include this in any deck unless it's an extreme budget dancing deck or something like that. Let's keep it going. Kanga with Shark. Again, there's so many. For example, it's completely outclassed when you're combining with Shark by Bungee Plumber. It's just a million times better, more reliable than Kanga in terms of getting that 1 damage off. Cheaper, and you know, it's just a trick instead of being a gravestone. All right. Kanga plus laser base. Again, there's a lot of reasons why that's not going to work because the environment will usually get covered before the Kanga pops out. It could be if Kanga really was a dry zombie, it would be better because then you could just stick it into laser base alpha without the opponent being able to answer the laser base alpha and then ping things. I think that would actually, this could be one of the gravestone cards in the game that would be better if it wasn't, because then at least you'd have some really cool combos, you know, to combine this with. But unfortunately, it's a gravestone card. There's going to be quite a few other cards in the crazy class specifically that are so bad. They would have been so good if they were not gravestones, and they're really bad that they are gravestones. I'll get to those later. Oh baby, clock synergy, easy S tier. That's just a meme. Realistically, this seems like a strong aggro card. Again, it does 4 damage per turn. There are some aggro decks where you can be teleporting cuckoo zombies in, maybe buffing them a little bit using a bonus attack. Again, could use this Professor Brainstorm. This seems to be outclassed by really a lot. Just put it in Lego stuff. It seems to be really outclassed by a lot of other aggro cards. And again, it's too weak to field clear. I feel like 2 health for your aggro cards is so much better than 1 because there's just so many. Just 1 is just too weak. Because this is not going to be useful in a lot of top tier decks, almost in any top tier deck, it has some, again, validity just in terms of its stats and how much power it has for a 2-cost card. I'll put it in D. But again, if this was a plant, this would be so much better because if your opponent plays a zombie, then you stick a plant on the field that does 4 attack. That would be good. But as a zombie, since zombies have to play their minions first and always give the plants an opportunity to answer unless you're teleporting it in. That's why a 4/1 zombie is very, very bad in comparison. You'll see when I do the Mega Hero class, Split P, which is also a 4/1, is actually an extremely good plant for that reason, while Cuckoo Zombie is an extremely bad zombie. All right, moving right along. Here's Disco Dance Floor. I'll move to the next one. So again, this does have some really cool combos. Usually you're not going to try to, again, combine this with Disco Knot to make a bullseye. The best combo with Disco Dance Floor is actually to use it as a platform to evolve your Headhunters. Headhunter then will then be a 5/6, plus it retains the ability of having 3 bullseye overshoot, which will just be, you know, it's really nice when you have your fusion cards to be combined with evolution card. This can be used as a finisher. You can get a little bit of overshoot damage. Is this a great aggro? The problem is with this as an aggro card, it looks like a really good aggro card because it sort of guarantees it has a lot of health, 3 health. Does 3? It's like a 3. It's the 3/3 plus the 3. Better than having 3 attack. It has 3 overshoot because then it will guarantee to hit your opponent's face even if they block it with a plant. But the problem is that a really important part of most aggro decks is to keep your opponent's lanes clear, so then you can put even stronger cards the next turn to be able to keep hitting face. And this, of course, has no ability to clear a lane. Like if you would have something even with just like a 2 cost 3/2, when they put a plant in front of it, usually that plant will block it, but that plant will die. The plant that blocks Disco Dance Floor, even though this will get a little more damage in the meantime, will usually not die. And then you're just going to have the plants have a ton of tempo and be able to take over the game. I'm not saying this is completely useless. This actually is a decent aggro card. I feel like I've yet to find the deck where Disco Dance Floor is really an extremely strong aggro card. It probably is. I probably have not, really honestly, have not given this enough credence in a aggro deck. I mostly use it for dancing decks. I'm actually going to give this a solid B because I think it has a lot of potential. Again, it is very good in a couple decks, especially with Headhunter and dancing. And I think I really actually haven't. I really admit I haven't found the full potential of this. It really seems like on paper, this is going to have a lot more uses than I've tried. Maybe I'll even write down in my deck list soon to try to make more decks. Really utilizing the very strong aggro quality, very high health, very high damage quality of Disco Dance Floor. All right. Fruitcake. I will put this instantly in S tier. I mean, there's not even a question. Fruitcake is the most efficient big removal card in the game by far. It's actually might even be more efficient than Shamrocket. Because again, 7 damage answers, it's too much damage. It really just answers any plant. The reason why I don't want this to get nerfed and do less than 7 damage, because the crazy class really needs an answer to this otherwise broken card. And of course, it is the 4-cost card in the solar class called Wingnut. This has 7 health. Probably a little too much health, to be honest. I think if Wingnut had 6 health, they could then go and make Fruitcake only do 6 damage. I think both of those changes together would probably be more balanced. This denies bonus attacks. It denies Mustache Monument. It denies going viral, because again, you can't do Frenzy as long as Wingnut's alive. And the fact that the zombies have the crazy class has an answer to Wingnut is really good. Again, Wingnut can be answered by Hand of Devastation, but so I do like the fact that Exploding Fruitcake exists. In my opinion, this card should cost 3. I think that would be way more balanced. It would still be an amazing answer, Wingnut, and probably still auto-include in almost every crazy deck. The thing that Exploding Fruitcake also really did to the game is it gave Z-Mech did not have any big removal cards before Exploding Fruitcake, and now he does, so it makes Z-Mech a much more balanced hero because he's not just automatically weak to any big plant. This does conjure your opponent a fruit. Now, fruit are actually pretty good cards. Every once in a while, they'll get a dragon fruit out of there, which will devastate some decks. There's Bananasaurus Rex. There are actually a lot of really good fruit cards. If their opponent has any dinosaurs on the field, this is also a huge liability because it will trigger the Dino Roar when your opponent conjures that fruit. So again, it does have that weakness, but this weakness is not even close to the amount of value you get from being able to remove basically any card in the game for 2. You can use this in the late game on your opponent's big cards. You can really even use this on turns 2 and 3 if the opponent plays some pesky Black-Eyed Pea or some other card, you know, Sporticus, whatever it is that you really just need to remove immediately. Even Triceratops is a very good card you usually use on the Triceratops to remove it. You can definitely do this earlier. Easy S tier. There's really no crazy deck that I run that does not have at least a few copies of Exploding Fruitcake. You don't want to use this again in really late game control decks, which anyway are not very good, like Control Boogaloo. You don't want to be doing Exploding Fruitcake because again, those decks really rely on you maintaining equal cards with your opponent, and this will give them a card advantage because it conjures them something. But usually the better decks, even control decks, are trying to win on turn 6 or 7 before the opponent can even play Dragon Fruit or whatever they get from this. So the card advantage factor is not, again, as important as the fact that Exploding Fruitcake is just so efficient. All right, keep it going. Can't click out of this. Here we go. Final mission. So this is destroy a zombie and then do 4 damage. So this is a pretty strong card. This is a sort of the problem with this card really that makes it actually less useful is it's not a big removal card. They have a big plant. This is not going to remove it usually. And it's also not a small removal card because again, it costs you an entire zombie plus a card that it really costs 2 cards to play. So it's very inefficient removing small zombies. So the fact something's going to have exactly like 3 or 4 health, again, and that it'll be worth it to destroy zombie, that's really the problem with this card, is it doesn't fit. You usually want your cards either to be small removal or big removal. Mid removal is usually not that good, just in terms of deck archetypes and building. Now, this does, of course, combine very well with Barrel of Deadbeards. Every once in a while, again, this can finish off your opponent with 4 damage. This can go face, which makes it a useful finisher in a lot of decks. I don't think this is the most useful card. It really doesn't make it into a lot of deck lists. You can include this in Valk Trickster Hybrid to activate your Barrel of Deadbeards. In general, I'm going to put this in C tier because, again, it has some solid uses, but it's usually very outclassed by Exploding Fruitcake is really the reason. But Exploding Fruitcake and Bungee Plumber, once you're running those, which you are running in basically every single crazy, there's usually not enough room for this very circumstantial final mission card, which again is not very good at controlling because it's very circumstantial. You have to have a minion on the field. All right. Keep it going. So we got Meteor Z. This is a solid environment. This is an aggro card. It can be used again to make your guys do a little more. It's a cheap environment. 2 cost is just a nice solid, especially for zombies because you have last say for the environment. This is never bad to have in a deck. This can also be used to make as a tempo card to make good trades. Because if, again, your opponent has a strong minion against one of your weak minions, so your guy's going to die and theirs will live, the Meteor Z can very often tilt that scale and instead make both of the minions die, which is very good. This does make it into plenty of decks. This is just a solid card, nothing too fancy. I'm going to put it in B tier because, again, just a good, cheap, also very good budget environment. All right. Here is Newspaper Zombie. This might be one of the cards that if it did not have Gravestone, it would actually be a lot easier to sort of make really weird combos with. This looks like a very good card because if this does take 1 damage, it becomes a 2-cost 5/3, which is ridiculous. If it takes 2 damage in one shot, it'll be then a 5/2. If it takes 1 damage repeatedly, it'll grow every single turn. The cap of this is very good. The problem is that taking 1 damage from a plant in this game is actually very, very difficult to pull off. I know you can try to then combine Newspaper, let's say, with Barrel of Deadbeards, which will do 1 damage to it when they explode. But again, that's very circumstantial because first of all, you have to have your Barrel of Deadbeards in your hand. Then you have to have a turn to play it, which it costs 2 brains. So, you know, if you're playing this on 2 or on, like, when are you going to play the Barrel of Deadbeards even? And you have to have a way of activating the Barrel of Deadbeards, which means they have to have had a minion in another lane or you have exactly Final Mission in your hand, which again is super unreliable. I just want to point out, sorry, in retrospect, that Final Mission is a 2-cost card now. It used to be a 1-cost card, which maybe was a little bit OP. Just kind of glaze over that and keep talking about Newspaper Zombie. That's why the icon says 1. Just want to point that out. So maybe if this was like, I don't know if this, maybe if this was not a Gravestone, it still would not be bad. I'm just trying to think if you would have Teleportation Zombie, being able to teleport this in and then do some splash cards, like then play this together with Fireworks. Again, it's really slow. You can play this on 2. It does 1 damage to your opponent's block meter, pings it. Sometimes you can fake them out and they'll put a minion in front of this thinking that's a different Gravestone. And then you play Fireworks Zombie. Again, Fireworks Zombie, it's so unreliable because if you play Fireworks Zombie the next turn, that's first of all just a 3-cost 3/3. It's not that good. It will activate this. This still, even if it takes 1 damage, is very easily answered by any plant that has 3 attack or by Berry Blast. So even when you activate, it's usually not that good. If you start stuffing too many cards into this and growing its health, then it can just get hard removed, and they've removed many of your cards with one of theirs. And that's the reason why Newspaper Zombie is going to be going in D tier. Moving right along. We got okay, Quasar. This is a really good card. Let's talk about the synergies. First of all, if you have Dr. Spacetime on the field, the superpower is free. If you have Mustache Waxer on the field, the superpower essentially is free because this will cost 2, give you an extra brain from the Mustache Waxer. Because it does have this, again, this card does have a mustache, and then you can play the guy for free. This is both a minion and a trick. So this will be very good, let's say, in Valk Trickster Hybrid. In the new version, I run this because, again, it synergizes with the Valkyrie. It also synergizes with the Trickster for the trick. So it has both of those aspects. Superpowers are very good. Again, there are some really bad superpowers. I will do a superpower tier list eventually, but superpowers are very strong. They are 1-cost cards that are meant to either cost 2 or the ultimate abilities are meant to cost 3. So essentially, you're gaining all the 2 cost of this card back if you get an ultimate ability. You're at least gaining 1 of it back if you get a superpower. Superpowers are very good cards. I'm actually going to put this in S tier because I think it is a really, really valuable card in a lot of decks. It triggers your Dino Roars, so it's good, let's say, with Stompodon. Just as so used, it's kind of just the jack of all trades cards. On the one hand, and on the second hand, it's so valuable in Valk Trickster Hybrid, and in certain decks, it's just a completely, very, very valuable card. And again, huge, Professor Brains, who is the one who can run this with Sneaky? It's going to be crazy and sneaky. So why is my mind blanking out on that? It's going to be Infinity, of course, with Quasar and Dr. Spacetime. Whoa. A little mental breakdown there. All right, moving right along. We are going to run... Oh, Space Ninja. Okay. This card is not nearly... It's such an overrated card. This is not really, really bad. First of all, it's a 2-cost 3/2 zombie, which again, that's good stats for a plant. That is not good stats for a zombie because any 1-cost plant that has 2 attack will answer this. Now, it does have this ability that when it's in an environment, it will have this cool ability of splashing, which, by the way, this is not the greatest ability. It can be useful. If this is in a laser-based alpha, this ability will decimate your opponent because the 1 damage will then be... deadly. I've tried that combo many times, and let me explain why that combo, this in laser-based alpha, I'll just pull that up so people can see what I'm talking about. In laser-based alpha, which makes any guy in it have deadly, this is the reason why this does not work. First of all, laser-based alpha is a 3-cost environment, so you have to play, if you play your Space Ninja on 2, and then you give the plant, you're basically giving the plant hero 2 turns to respond to a dry 3/2, which they will always remove the Space Ninja before you're able to play the laser-based alpha after the plants play again on turn 3, because this is an environment. If you play the laser-based alpha on turn 3, and then you stick your Space Ninja into it on turn 4. Again, it's turn 4. If the plant hero does not have a way to respond to a dry 3/2 on turn 4, the plant has a really, really bad deck. Anything that does 2 damage, they could just have any environment too, which again, they'll be able to play that environment before the Space Ninja will attack on turn 4. That's why, again, if you want to even try teleporting this into laser-based alpha, you're still giving, first of all, you need a 3-card combo of... Actually, it's impossible because that's actually 3 classes, so there's actually no way to pull off that combo. First of all, it's impossible. But there's really... the point is, there's really almost no way to activate Space Ninja just because this card is overrated. I'm actually putting this F tier because I actually personally believe that the Space Ninja has no business actually being in any competitive deck, even for budget players. We're going to move right along. Again, with Shark, you have exactly the same problem. What turn? On turn 8, you're playing Ninja Shark and hoping your environment doesn't get cut. It's almost impossible to activate. Keep it going. If it weren't for how overrated this is, maybe I put in D. Really, it does deserve an F because it's just a really, really bad card overall. All right, Sugar Retreat. This is a solid card. Again, this is a 2-cost card that gives one of your guys 3 attacks. So this really has some neat synergies. This can be used, again, it is a trick, so it can combine this with Trickster or with Paparazzi with the Brainy class. That's usually not how you're using it. You're usually going to use this for very specific decks. Let's say OTK decks. You can, let's say, teleport in a minion, then stick some Sugar Retreats and do a bonus attack. So this is actually very good with Professor Brainstorm, mostly. I'd say most of the crazy class cards are best with Professor Brainstorm. He's the best, probably the best hero in the game. A really cool synergy that I had was actually running a regular science deck. So you got Drone Engineer. Again, you can find this. It's called either the Sugary Science or Sweet Science. You can find that on YouTube. Where you have Drone Engineer, and you can buff that up with Sugar Retreat, make this do a ton of damage. It also works very well with your Gatekeepers, which again, this will go from 2 Bullseye, very hard card to remove, to then it'll become a 6/6 Bullseye. If you stick a Sugar Retreat, usually that little bit of damage from the Sugar Retreat really does make it worth it, because again, this does basically 3 bullseye damage to face. Imagine this like a Berry Blast to the face, but it does not charge your opponent's block meter by playing it. This also can be used on turn 4, and then immediately on turn 5, you just go, in that science deck, you just go Gadget Scientist. So this 2-cost card will essentially do 6 extra damage to your opponent's face, because again, whenever you combine with either Gadget Scientist or with Lurch for Lunch, making it do a bonus attack, that's a really, really good turn 4 play, is to play this. It does have other uses, never really a bad card. I'm going to give this a solid B. Again, it's not one of the top tier in the game, but it's really overall a very solid card. The Gatekeeper will be a 5/6 bullseye. Sorry, I said 6/6, didn't do the math right. 5/6. All right, here's Zombie's Best Friend. Ooh, I've tried running Zombies. It looks like such a high value card because again, it's 2 minions for a 2-cost card. The 1-cost card is pretty bad. Most 1-cost cards in this game are not good. And even the ones that have some uses are very often not to be usable. Again, if this would just make Quick Draw Conman every time, this would be broken. But really, your average, let's say your average 2-cost card is basically a 2/1. The 2/2s are on the higher end. So this would basically be the equivalent of like a 2-cost 4/2 or a 2-cost 3/3. I guess that would be good. Split into 2 minions. I haven't found the use of this, really. I feel like with Unlife for the Party, it's usually just better to run Egg if you want 2 minions. It's actually a cheaper way of doing it, the extra 2/1 on the field. I really don't know the use, the great use of this. I keep trying to stick it into zoo decks where you want a lot of minions, but again, the 1 health makes it very easily included in a field clear. So it probably would almost be better to have 1 solid minion than to have 2 minions that are very small. It depends on the circumstances. I feel like maybe there's a good deck, and if you guys want to show me in the comment section below an image or link to your deck that you think Zombie's Best Friend is amazing in, I'd be happy to see it. I think because it's not actually a bad card, I'll just put it in C tier, but I really don't think it's very useful. All right, we're going to keep going. We do have the Unexpected Gifts that used to cost 2. This costs 3, so we'll put it in its appropriate place right over here, and we'll move right on to Abracadabra. Okay. This is one of the cards that, if this was not a gravestone, this would be so good. Imagine teleporting this card in on turn 4 with Professor Brainstorm. That would be so broken. It's a 3/2 that does 3 damage to a random. That would be such a good control strategy. Unfortunately, it has a gravestone, so it gives your opponent always a turn to stick a guy in front of this or to use Gravebuster. I did do a deck. This is called Dab Razor. Uploaded that to Frame Up Gaming recently, where this is fine. This card is just like fine. It's usually not worth putting in any deck. It's usually too slow to put in a pet deck. It's a 3-cost Gravestone. Not really worth putting a Mustache deck because again, it's a 3-cost card that is its ability. The whole card is ability, and its ability, because it's a Gravestone, is way too unreliable. I'm just going to put it in C tier because again, really in the top level of the game, there's really not going to find very many decks. I could almost put this in D, but I'll put it in C just because we have found a couple decks where it is good. You basically want to make sure, if you're running Abracadabra in a deck, that you're running on turn 2 a card that they need to answer and spend turn 3 answering, like Swashbuckler, for example. If that hits face on turn 2, they got to spend their turn 3 dealing with this, which really then makes your Abracadabra maybe useful. The other problem is that if they have no minions on the field when this pops out of the Gravestone, if you just play this on turn 3 and they pass, this is just a 3-cost 3/2 that's very, very easy to answer next turn. So its ability is also very circumstantial. Another problem with the Abracadabra is that it's weak to blocks, because again, if this had Bullseye and it always activated its ability if your opponent doesn't stick a minion in front of it, that would be fine. Now that it gets blocked, a quarter of the time, it's just another reason why this is not a good card. Very unreliable. I almost want to put this in D. We'll put it in C because it did find a good deck for it. All right. Here's Disco Zombie. This creates 2 dancing. Again, this is one of these cards on paper looks really good. The problem is it dies really badly at field clear. There's a lot better if you play this on turn 3, or on 4, it really gives the plants the opportunity to play a much better plant with no fear of repercussions. Again, this will basically do 4 damage for a 3-cost card and ping your opponent's block meter twice, which is not good. Again, this can be combined cleverly, let's say, with Headhunter. In order to make 2 dancing cards, it'll activate your Headhunter twice. It can count as 2 minions for your Flamenco. I usually find that it's better in Instead of having to commit 3 brains to 2 minions, it's better just to run in dancing decks. Again, a lot more just 1 drops. I'm not going to say it's a completely useless card, but it's not a good card, and you certainly do not want to be running this in any non-dancing deck. This will buff your Unlife for the party twice. There's a lot better options in the game. Because this is outclassed, for sure by Zombie's best friend, but really just by everything. I'm actually going to be putting this in D, because even in dancing decks, I really don't actually suggest using a dancing deck, even though it might be viable. All right. I could have put this in C, though. Maybe in low C, because in budget dancing decks, this is good. So maybe we should put it in low C. Because it's a little overrated, and I see it being misused a lot. People just think, oh, 2 minions for price of 1. It's so sad, because Disco Zombie was one of the coolest plants in the original Plants vs. Zombies, and they kind of made it into a trash card. I really think this would be really good as a 2-cost card. This would actually be a very, very solid card in dancing decks. I don't think it would even be broken either. Maybe it should only have 2 attack. Anyway. Exploding Imp. This is, again, another really problematic gravestone card. Because, again, since it's a gravestone, it always gives your opponent to stick literally a 1/1 in front of this and answer it. If this was not a gravestone, teleporting this in and buffing it would be a really, really good strategy. Again, we have found the Exploding Imp in that same one where we did that with the Tennis Champ, the OTK Tennis Champ. We did run Exploding Imp. You can combine this with, let's say, the Beastie class if you're going to be going crazy. Beastly, which is going to be Electric Boogaloo. You can sort of stick this in Area 22, but even then, that is a 6-cost combo, a 6-cost over the course of 2 turns combo of Area 22, usually, and it's still going to be answered by any 3-cost minion that they stick into the Area 22. They might be scared to stick a minion there, but it's really very unreliable, and again, usually the Area 22 will just get removed off the field. If they cover this Area 22 with the almighty Spikeweed sector, you're getting no value out of your Exploding It. It's just too, it does so much damage, but again, it also doesn't help you maintain any tempo on the field because it does 1 damage to itself. I feel like even if this did not do 1 damage to itself, which is a huge weakness, even a 3-cost 6/1 would not necessarily be that good. I think this would be a lot more viable if it didn't do the damage to itself. This is just a flawed card. This needs to have a 2nd health, maybe. I don't really know what to do with this. It's not very good. Where did I put Tennis Champ in D? I'm gonna put this in D too, because again, it's part of not any top tier decks. B for moving right along. Here's Fireworks Zombie. I used to use Fireworks more, but again, this has the problem of being a control zombie that is a dry zombie. So this will only, again, this would be a decent control card. This card is the opposite. Because it's a control card, this would be very good if it was a gravestone, because this would do 1 damage to everything the plant played on turn 3. Now that this is a dry zombie, it only does 1 damage. It only controls what they played the turn before, which is a huge flaw for control zombies. This does have some uses, though. This can be used to activate. It's usually used as an activator for other cards. For, let's say, Barrel of Deadbeards. Pretty good combo. Deadbeards on 2, this on 3. Again, this also does do, if your opponent, there's a couple strategies like Beans, particularly Admiral Navy Bean is very, very weak. Fireworks Zombie is a good answer. If they've played 2 Admiral Navy Beans on turns 1 and 2, and you come Fireworks Zombie, you're going to win that game. So this really is, again, in some situations, a very good control card, but in most it is not. This also does activate a lot of your late game Gargs, like the Garg launchers, we'll say, like Gargantuar Throwing Imp, and most notably in the Beastie class, the Garg Throwing Garg. If you want to see a really good synergy between Garg Throwing Garg and Fireworks Zombie, it's a really fun deck. You've probably all seen the video on YouTube because it's basically my most viewed video. It's called When Garg Throwing Garg Throws Zombots. Check out that deck on YouTube. So, solid card, not useful in a lot of decks. It's definitely better than everything we have in C, so I'm going to give that a solid B. Maybe even low-end B, because again, this is not as useful as, let's say, Moonbase or probably even Sugary Tree. Alright, keep it going. This Gizzard Lizard, this again has the flaw of being a control card, which is a dry zombie, so only takes out the things that you played before. It does not take out anything you play this turn. Again, you can teleport this in, and maybe then it's okay. It does do a pretty decent thing of field clear. The problem is that it needs zombie evolution, so it makes it control cards. You want to be super reliable. You don't want it to control your opponent if, and there being a bunch of ifs. And this zombie evolution does a huge if, because typically in control decks you're not running a lot of zombies. Every once in a while, it really just costs too much. Maybe as a 2-cost card, this would have been better. 2-cost 3/2, just because again it does cost you a whole zombie when you use the evolution. Otherwise, the 3-cost 3/3, which is again decent stats for a plant, is a 3-cost 3/3, but very bad stats for a zombie, because it could be used as a control card every once in a while. This really does, again, against a bean deck or against some aggro decks, like against aggro solar flare. This actually is a pretty good card against it, but it's very, very unreliable. I'm going to put this in D tier and keep it going. Looks like the chat is pretty much on the same page as me. I know Reddit might not be, but it seems like the Twitch chat is pretty much on the same page as me usually, more or less, in terms of what tiers we put these in. All right. Let's keep it going, man. I gotta hurry up. This video is taking a long time. Jester, horrible card. You don't want to really use this in dancing. It's just too expensive. It's very unreliable for this to be doing a lot of damage to your opponent's face. Plus, again, it has the problem of being a 1 attack. If they don't stick something in front of this is going to be pinging your opponent's block meter for 1 a turn, which is bad for a 1-drop to do. A 3-drop, ridiculously bad. You need your opponent to have exactly the right, like, 1 or 2 attack guy to even get any value out of Jester at all. And again, for a 3-cost, this could be a 2-cost card. I think this might even be a very decent 2-cost card. You can use it with dancing synergy. It really does a lot of damage over time, but for 3, it's just way too expensive. I'm not going to say piece of trash garbage, but this is, again, going right in D tier. It's just such a flawed... the gravestone doesn't matter. It's kind of just a really flawed idea. Keep it going. PvZ. This is a little too expensive in my opinion. It's very hard, again, to make a deck where Overshoot is carrying your deck. And if you combine this in deck with a lot of other Overshoot cards, by the way, it doesn't actually add any value to your Overshoot. Because if you, let's say, for example, have, besides for the glitch, which I'll put on YouTube, there is a way to glitch this out. But if you have Disco Dance Floor inside your PvZ, it only still does a total of Overshoot 3. So, this, you can't combine this in an Overshoot deck. It doesn't work. It's bad in Overshoot deck. There's a couple cards this will combine. Let's say with Abracadabra, because that will make the Abracadabra go face. But again, if you play PvZ on 3, and then you play Abracadabra in it on 4, that is giving an entire turn for your opponent just to cover PvZ before you've gotten any value. The idea with environments, you typically want to get value out of them before your opponent is able to answer them. And again, 3-cost environments are a lot worse. They're very outclassed by 1 or 2-cost environments, since usually the main idea of the main value of environment is the fact that it can destroy one of your opponents. Again, this can work with Professor Who, Dr. Spacetime, because it'll make it hit face. It can work with Tomb Raiser, the little cute combo where the Tomb Raiser then does Overshoot. It's usually not useful in very many decks, and for that reason, I'm going to put it in... I guess it's about the same as these C tier cards. It's a little better than these. This can be used as a finisher. Again, if you need just 3 damage, real good way. If you have a guy in the field, really good way of getting 3 damage in. I'm going to put it in a low C tier. Here's a card, Unexpected Gift. So this is a 3-cost card that draws 3 cards. So let's just compare this, for example, to Funded Razor, which Funded Razor is just a solid, it's not an OP, this is a solid card draw card. Funded Razor is so much better. It's always better to draw 2 cards in your deck that have synergy that will help you with your win condition than to draw 3 random cards, which are, again, usually 1 is completely useless, you're never going to even play it that game, and the other 2 are just mediocre. So that, for just even if it didn't conjure your opponent event card, this would be horrible. And especially the fact that that this conjures your opponent then a card too just makes it even worse. You're giving your opponent free cards. Again, you can use this together with Conman. Only does 1 day. It's just not worth. This is really not a card that's worth running in almost any deck. We used to have a deck that was an Infinity deck that combined this with the crazy. I guess it's in the crazy class. We'll get to this in just a second. But with Tankylosaurus, so drawing 3 cards is good because it activates this ability 3 times as opposed to Funded Razor would only activate it twice. But this deck has been trashed because barrels cost 1. You can go and see that deck. The I don't know what it was called, the Infinity Splash. I don't even know what that deck was called. It's not worth running anymore anyway. This is a really, really bad card. This used to cost 2. I think the reason you see over here the icon is kind of cut off. You can say it cost 2. I think the synergy with Stompodon was too good because it activates your Dino Roars 3 times. I think that's why they nerfed it, but they also nerfed Stompodon. I don't think this, I think as a 2-cost card, this could be decent. It would actually be a very decent card to run together in a Stompodon deck or Tankylosaurus. I think this would be decent as a 2-cost card now. I don't know why they needed to nerf this. I'm not gonna say it's never useful, but it's almost never useful. I'm putting in D tier. Man, we got a lot of D's today. All right. Oh boy, Zombot's Wrath. Okay, first of all, this ability is useless. This is a half decent card, but the chances again of having 5 zombies on the field, and then you let the plants play because it's a trick. So the plants always are able to react to your zombies before you play this card, and that all 5 of them survive is almost completely impossible. Now, we did actually pull off some really serious pirate booties where we draw 5 cards. We did like a meme deck where we did that yesterday, so I should probably do that same deck but run Zombot's Wrath and see how many 6 attack Wraths we can get. Alright, I'll do that deck. Fine. But this is not the usefulness. The usefulness is a 3-cost trick that removes almost anything the opponent plays on turn 3. Very few 3-cost plans that don't get removed by Zombot's Wrath. Now, this Captain Cucumber is not answered by this. This can go face, so this 3, if you need 3 damage to face. The problem with Zombot's Wrath, really, I used to use this a lot until Exploding Fruitcake came out as an event card. Exploding Fruitcake is always better than Zombot's Wrath because, again, this is a mid-range control card. It's too expensive to answer early game minions because then it's just incredibly outclassed by Bungee Plumber, and it's for late game minions it's outclassed by Fruitcake. That's the reason why you really don't see me using Zombot's Wrath. I think this is actually a solid card, but it's just really outclassed by a lot of other things. I'm actually looking forward to making that meme deck now. I don't know to put this in C or in D. I think because, again, it's not even it's a rare. So for budget players who don't have all the fruitcakes and stuff, I guess this is okay. It's not a bad card, but it's outclassed. I'm just going to put in low C tier. It's about the same as Abracadabra. It's not worse than Abracadabra. You know what I mean? I'll put it the same. It's probably actually better than Abracadabra and some of these other C tier classes. So we'll say it's a solid C. All right. Here's a Cake Explosion. This is basically exactly like Wrath, except that it's 1 more expensive, does 1 more damage. By the way, the difference between 3 damage and 4 is not a lot in this game. 2 and 3 is significant. 3 and 4, usually anything that has, there's a lot of, 3 is the magic number in terms of mid-range control. Plus, this can't go face. If this could go face, I think this would be cool because then you could use it as a finisher. This almost has no business being in any deck. It's so bad. I'm just putting this in F. I don't really think it's ever worth running in any good deck. There's ever worth running Exploding Fruitcake. Should I even put this in Commit Lego Step just because just because you end up conjuring this from, like, I don't know, from just your random tricks. Maybe this is just freaking fine, I'll put it there. You're right. I think this card, since you never include this in your deck, and it's only a liability when you conjure it, and when you do conjure this every once in a while, I'm gonna say, yeah, we'll put it in Lego Step tier. All right, let's please delete tier if you haven't seen the other ones. All right, here's Cosmic Dancer. This card is like both really good and really bad. Again, it has the overshoot. It creates another guy. It triggers your Dino Wars. That guy has overshoot, which sometimes is good. It's just, but again, it's a 4-cost 2/3. So the tempo this gives you is a huge disadvantage. This is really not good to run in dancing decks because this is way too slow to be combining with Flamenco or with Headhunter, which are usually going to be the finishers in that deck. Because again, it's much better to run cheaper zombies that you're able to swarm the field. Usually you play this on turn 4. If this gives you a 1-cost card, you can't even play that until the next turn. It's really not a good card. I'm going to put it in D. I'm not going to say it's useless, but it's really not a good card. Here's Headhunter. This is a card I used to think was one of the worst legendaries right when it came out. This is in Triassic. I thought this was like the worst legendary in the world. We have found a lot of decks where Headhunter just carries. Again, that Ramp Dance deck, you'll probably find that on YouTube by the time I upload this tier list. Headhunter is ridiculously good. It's very, very good to combine with Disco Dance Floor. But even really putting this on any of your backup dancers, let's say, combines very well with the Dance Off ability if you're Boogle or Brainstorm, because you can use this to cover one of your little backup dancers. Plus, if you play Dance Off after you have a Headhunter on the field, it actually activates the Headhunter 3 times. 2, because it makes 2 backup dancers, and plus the Dance Off itself is a dancing trick, which will activate it a 3rd time. This can really carry games. The amount of damage this does in such a short amount of time, particularly because of the synergy of Flamenco. So you put a bunch of little guys in the field, and if they can't answer your headhunter, you're just going to win the game in 1 to 2 turns with some kind of Flamenco combo. So I do think Headhunter is a decent card. It's very weak to Shamrocket. This is one of the cards that, again, you have to combine 2 cards into the higher level of this, which is a 5/6 Bullseye, and then Shamrocket removes 2 cards using 1 card. So this is another card which falls very victim to Shamrocket. Please delete Shamrocket from this game. Shamrocket costing 5 obviously would not be able to answer this, which would be perfect. Solid B. Just gonna give this solid B. All right, moving right along. Orchestra Conductor. This, again, this looks like a very good card to combine with a zoo deck with a lot of little minions. I used to even run this in OTK Valk decks because you usually have a lot of guys in the field. It gives you a lot of value. If you have 2 other guys in the field, I mean, this is really just putting a lot of pressure on your opponent. The problem is, again, it's a card which you're activating or using your zoo cards to buff them up, but it does not prevent field clear. A huge flaw. Does not prevent small removal. Because it does only adds attack and does not add health, so it doesn't address the weakness. It's a win more card that does not address the weakness of the decks that it synergizes with. This is almost, I've realized over the years, I used to use this again more often, but I realized over the years that Professor Brain's Swarm decks is really just not a useful card for that reason. I'm not going to say it's completely useless, but I will be putting that in D tier. All right, keep it going. Okay. This card is so bad. First of all, 4 cost 4/2 is not good stats. Now it has this neat little ability. If this card was a gravestone, I guess this is the theme of the crazy classes. All the gravestone cards should not be gravestones, and all the not gravestones should be gravestones. This card, if this was a gravestone, again, it would be a 4 cost card that would pop out at the end of turn 4 and control, potentially, at least limit the potential threats that the plants play on turn 4. This only affects turn 3. It is such a flaw in any dry zombies. Plus, how many times? Thank you, Master Molly.
Loving this switch from gameplay to tier list.
You like the tier list.
Liking the new Deep Fry channel.
Thank you so much. That's a new podcast channel. It's called The Deep Fry. If you want to see some really deep discussions in a really, really smart way, check out The Deep Fry. It's my new channel on YouTube. Now, thank you so much. This card, usually when you see this, it was conjured by something, or it was you're using a leap deck and it just turns into dumb Stupid Cupid, a 4 cost card that dies to 2 damage. Like, really? I'm definitely putting this in please delete here. This is it's such a flaw. I really, again, teleporting this in is way too slow. For a 5 cost, 2 card combo, to have a 4/2 on the field, make sure one of your opponent's cards has 0 attack that turn and takes 1 day. Just a big bunch of garbage abilities. It should never really be run in any deck. It's so frustrating when you leap a 3 cost card into dumb Stupid Cupid. Again, turn this into a gravestone. I think it could be a good card with Mixed Up Gravedigger. I think that might actually work. Again, people also think, oh, Stupid Cupid is so good with Toxic Wasting because then the 1 damage will be deadly. And it'll remove anything in the game. But again, that's a really, because it only will control, even a deadly, even very efficiently, only controls what they played the turn before. Not what they turned. Teleporting Stupid Cupid and Toxic Waste Imp with a teleportation zombie is actually impossible, because that is the brainy class, the crazy class, and the sneaky class, which is impossible. So maybe if this had been a sneaky card and actually could be used in every imp deck, maybe then this would be viable, because then you could use, let's say, with HG and Super Brains, you'd be teleporting this in while it's deadly. It could be that, but this is just in the wrong class. It's just the wrong thing. It's just such a flawed card. Definitely going in delete here. Easy. All right. Tanklasaurus. This real card, it's not. This card is really too slow. It's a 4 cost 2/6, which is not good stats. Now the Dino Roar, it will do 2 damage over time. It's random though. So it's not like, it's very unprecise. Very often it goes face and just doesn't end up doing enough until, again, 4 cost card this dies. I feel like as a 3 cost card, this would have been a lot better, like 3 cost 2/4 with the same Dino Roar ability, because then you'd at least be able to make more combos. The problem also recently with Tanklasaurus is that Barrel of Barrels used to be a really good combo, because it was used to be a 1 cost card that would make a zombie deadly. And that combined with Tankylosaurus really did make it worth it, because every single time it would hit a plant, it would kill that plant. Plus, this conjures a barrel, so it would activate a ability. It would activate the Tankylosaurus immediately. Now that this is a 2-cost card, and Barrels really is not very playable. It's only playable in a few decks. It's not very good at 2. It really then just makes, like, its main synergy guard with Tankylosaurus is not good. Again, combining this with Laser-Based Alpha is exactly the same problem as I said before, because either this or the Laser-Based Alpha usually will get removed before you're able to get any value out of its ability. For that reason, this is a legendary. It's really weird. I'm not going to say it's completely useless, but it's really not a good card to be running in almost any deck. I'm going to put it in D tier. All right. Keep it going. Here's the chickening. Again, I'm doing it not on how powerful the cards are, it's how useful they are in this game to actually run and justify an entire valuable deck slot running, and Tankylosaurus is typically not. Is the screen frozen? No, we're good. All right. The chickening. Back in the day when I just started playing this game, this was, in my opinion, the best card in the game, and it was so powerful. It also happened to be a reason this used to be a lot better, is because Mushroom Swarm decks, like little swarmy decks, were a lot better back then when the block meter had 10 charges, because then you could get away with little tiny bits of damage and swarming your opponent that way. Nowadays, the chickening on the highest level of the game is actually way too expensive for what it does. It's just unreliable. Again, against tempo decks, this is bad because 2 damage is usually not enough to kill tempo cards. Against control decks, this is not useful because, again, the control decks are usually going to have very big minions only and going to be controlling the early game. This is not going to be good against control decks. So it has those 2 very bad matchups. Even against aggro decks nowadays, this is very unreliable. This will only be good against like a Bean Swarm deck or like a Mushroom Swarm deck. But against, let's say, aggro Solar Flare, usually on turns 3 and 4, you're very often playing minions that do not die to chickening. For example, aggro Solar Flare on turn 3 plays Poison Ivy, which has 3 health, and on turn 4, it either plays Bloomerang or it plays Elderberry, which again, they both have either 3 or 4 attack, they have 3 or 4 health, and they do not die to the chickening. So because the chickening, unfortunately, I love this card. It's so cool. It's such comic relief. I mean, this really captures the charm of PvZ heroes in a card, and I love it for that. Unfortunately, it's just become so useless in competitive play for the reasons I described. I'm not going to quite put it in D. I think, again, it's not a bad card. Every once in a while, if you're against a Swarm deck, this will win the game single-handedly. I'm just going to put it in, like, C, kind of like just average to low C tier card. I kind of wish it was better because I absolutely love, I just love the chickening just as a card. I just love it. All right, here we go. Valkyrie, oh man, one of easily the best cards in the game. You can build an entire deck around this. You hardly even need any other legendaries. You just put a lot of little guys in the field, and as they get removed, the Valkyrie will grow and grow and grow, and you combine this. This is mostly, again, actually it's only good with one hero, and that is Professor Brainstorm. Valkyrie is almost unplayable with other heroes because you can't teleport, and you have to make sure the Valkyrie does all of its damage without the plants having the ability to answer it, slay with like a Shamrocket. So the best combo with Valkyrie, of course, and Professor Brainstorm is with Mustache Monument, because that will make it do its huge chunk of 10, 15, even 20 attacks, sometimes all in one shot. You can also teleport it into an empty lane to make it do that damage guaranteed without the plant answering it, or you can even go teleport Valk bonus attack. That would be now a 7-cost combo, which again, if you have a 10 attack Valk, which just means 5 of your minions died when you had this in your hand, this will make that do 20 damage. It's one of the absolute best finishers in the game just for Professor Brainstorm. It's obviously part of Valk Trickster Hybrid. This card used to cost 3. They nerfed it to cost 4. It really didn't make that much of a difference because, again, being able to finish, let's say, play this with Mustache Monument, instead of doing it on turn 6, now you have to wait till turn 7. Usually, you need to wait anyway until turn 7 to play this. It's so... Okay, yeah, so again, Valkyrie, I used to run this in like a Z-Mech deck where you have Sports and Valkyrie and going viral. It's usually not good. Again, it's not good enough because it's so circumstantial and it needs to be in your hand for so long before you play it in order for it to gain that attack. That's why it's, and when finally you do play it, it can be removed by a big removal card, which almost every plant deck is going to have some big removal card like Shamrocket. That's the reason why Valkyrie is really not that good with other heroes. You can just combine this with Z-Mech and use Going Viral and just use it as a 4-cost 4/6 or 6/6. It's okay, but then it's just stats and it's just very meh. But because with Professor Brainstorm, it's absolutely, arguably the best finisher in the entire game, we're going to put that in S tier. All right. Keep it going. Binary stars. I'm not going to touch. I talk about Valk Trickster Hybrid now since this is a good opportunity to do it. You know what? If you think that Valkyrie and Trickster should not go in the same deck, I'll tell you the weakness of Valkyrie. This card is strong all around. The only weakness this card has is not getting it. And it not going, you just draw you have your 4 cards, you hard mulligan, and you still did not get your Valkyrie. That is the only time Valkyrie decks lose. And that's the reason why Valk Trickster Hybrid is the best deck in the entire game, because then you don't have that weakness. If you are hard mulliganing to either get at least 1 Valkyrie or 1 Trickster in your starting hand, you will almost just run the statistics. You have 40 cards in your deck, and you're basically drawing 8 cards to try to get 1 of 8 cards. You are almost always going to get a Valkyrie or a Trickster in your starting hand, and Trickster has the exact same weakness. So I know Valkyrie needs you to have minions, Trickster needs you to have tricks. It slows down the deck when you're trying to combine the two, but you have a lot of cards like Beam Me Up, you got Quasar, you have very efficient cards like Barrel of Deadbeards that will be 2 minions for the price of 1, so you don't need to run as many minions in your deck. Your Valkyries do count as a minion to buff your other Valk. If you get 2 Valks in your hand, you play one as a 4/6, they gotta answer it, that buffs your other Valk for the finish. And that's the reason why Valk Trickster Hybrid is the best deck in the entire game, because the only weakness, again, of the strong, it has the 2 strongest win conditions basically in the game, which are Valkyrie and Trickster, which are only weak from not drawing it. Having both of those takes care of the only weakness, real weakness, that Valkyrie and Trickster decks have. Of course, the other weakness is Wingnut, which prevents bonus attacks, but you always run 4 copies of Exploding Fruitcake in every Valk and every Trickster deck, and that will be a super efficient answer to Wingnut. And a Valk Trickster Hybrid rant. Just try the deck, guys. Just try the deck. Here we go. Woo! Binary stars. If this card was not a gravestone, this would be so good. Imagine teleporting this in. And doing some combo. Imagine teleporting this in on turn 6 and then playing Trickster on turn 7. Now, if you teleport this in, you can't play your Tricksters until the trick stage, which gives your opponent to do something offensively or to play Gravebuster or just mess you up, play Brainana, mess you up in some way. This would be so good if it wasn't a gravestone. This card is not a good card. First of all, it's way too slow for dancing decks. This does not, again, it can make your Headhunter do double damage. I think that's a cool idea, but it's way better just to run cheap dancing zombies, not combining this with Flamenco or with Headhunter. In order for this to be good, you basically have to play on turn 6 and have a Bungee Plumber in hand in order to protect it. Because, again, this dies to any 3 attack plant stuck in front of this gravestone. Will kill it if you can't protect it. And then, even then, the Bungee Plumber does not always, even though you're going to double the damage, this will do 4 damage. It does not, the Bungee Plumber does not always answer every single plant, because they could put a plant with 5 health in front of this. It's really not a very useful card. I've tried so many times to make Binary Stars work. I really have tried. Again, if you want to teleport this in on turn 6 and then teleport Trickster in on turn 7, first of all, they can Grave Bust this, so it's very weak, and you can't rely on that. Second of all, that needs a Binary Stars, a Trickster, and 2 teleports. It's just too high maintenance as a gravestone to be good. I really think this card is overrated. I'm not going to say it's completely useless, but I am going to put this in D tier. I could put this in C, but because it's extremely overrated, I'm putting it in D tier. It actually is not a very useful card in very many competitive decks. There's usually a better option. Flawed card, unfortunately. Wish that wasn't a gravestone. But anyway. Alright. Chat's not going to like that one with the Binary Stars. But really, again, if you understand the way PvZ heroes work and how solid, reliable win condition, your deck needs to be so reliable. This is, for a 5-cost card, is not a reliable way of getting a win condition. Unlike Flamenco Zombie, Flamenco is not a great. This is actually great. If this was a gravestone, this would be a useless piece of garbage. Again, because you'd need this to survive all your dancing zombies to survive until it's part of the gravestone. Thankfully, this is not a gravestone card. This is actually a very decent finisher. Very good for budget decks, and there's even some competitive decks, again, like the Ramp Dance deck. This really just does a lot. This can do easily, because dancing to cards are typically very cheap, easily do like 6 direct damage or 8 to face. Every once in a while you'll get a 10 if you're running like Synchronized Swimmer in a Boogaloo deck. It's not one of the best finishers in the game. Dancing is not one of the best strategies. Again, it's very, very weak to field clear usually, but there's some pretty solid dancing decks, and it's good for budget players. So, you know, dancing is really not that bad. Headhunter is pretty important for a highly competitive dancing deck, but every once in a while dancing is just take over the game. I'm just going to give this a solid B. Just for all those reasons. Let's go. Come on, Foot Soldier Zombie. Guys, first of all, 5-cost 3. Your 5-cost cards have to be finishers. They have to be taking over the game. This is not going to take over the game. It's a 5-cost 3/4. Great. It does 3 damage. It's a dry zombie that's a control zombie. That's not good, because you're only controlling what they've played on turns before. You're not controlling them play that turn. Plus, it's only 3 damage. 3 damage does not kill 4 drops. It does not kill 4-cost cards. Except for like Bloomerang. The B-Rex has 4 health by the time you can play Foot Soldier. This is not a good card, guys. Usually, the only time you see this is when it's randomly, again, you leap your 4-cost card into a 5. This is so bad. Plus, it's only on heights. Why would you limit this card to only heights? If this could be activated its ability wherever you played it, it would still be a piece of trash garbage. Now you need your heights lane to be open. This is not a good. This is easily going into please delete. This just has no. There's not even a good way to fix this card. Even if this card was a 5/5 and did 5 damage, okay, maybe then it would be okay. And didn't have to be on heights. I feel like that's how much you'd have to buff this card to even make it viable to even run in any deck. It wouldn't even be the most useful control card, by the way, because you'd rather run finishers than run this really slow 5-cost card you have to teleport it. I don't even think it would be that good if this was a 5/5, delete the heights condition, and make it do 5 damage. It still really wouldn't be that good. It's so bad. Goodbye. Do 5 with splash damage. I don't know. All right, here's Frankatar. This has again, like almost every single Gargantuar in the game. This is not a good card because it has dry zombie sickness. This is an expensive, big card, lots of stats. Its ability only makes it have a little bit of more stats, and it is removed by Shamrocket, by Squashed, by just any big removal card. Completely obliterates Frankatar. Yeah, we've done a couple of fun decks. Look up Frankatar if you want, but it's really just a meme, even those decks. You combine this with Swarm. Again, combining this with Swarm and giving it ways to grow does not take care of the problem that when you play this, it just gets Shamrocketed or Cob Cannoned usually, or whatever, very efficiently. Not a good card. Not a good card. We're putting this in D. Giving it the good D again. It's not complete garbage, but it's pretty trash. All right. It's not good in Valk decks, guys. It's really not. It's way too expensive. Better run some card draw. All right, Gargantuar Throwing Imp. The only deck I've really found Garg Throwing Imp is good is, again, in that same deck. It's called when Garg throws Zombots, and that is a Splash Boogaloo deck. The combos you want to use Garg Throwing Imp. Now, this used to, I think, only have 1 attack. Now it has 2 attack. You can probably see in the icon, it probably, if you look really carefully, the icon actually says it has 1 attack. If you look very, very carefully. The best combos for this, again, is Firework Zombie, maybe Barrel of Barrels. Again, if you can activate this twice, the idea is like this. This is only throwing around 5-cost cards. So why not run?
Soldier Boys up, what are you on about?
Soldier Boy's
Remember
trash.
when you got him on heights and did 3 to face from BMR?
Right, exactly.
Well,
that one time. That one time when you got from Batman Rising.
And please delete. You should also put your channel in. Please delete SMH.
So if Garg Throwing Garg only makes 1 Gargantuar, it's probably just better to run that Gargantuar. You know what I mean? Why would you make a slow Gargantuar card? So this is only good if you get 2. How do you get 2 Gargantuars out of this? So first of all, This is a very good card if you place it in with Boogaloo, like I did in that deck in Hunting Grounds, because this will make this into a 3/3, and it will guarantee that it'll make a Garg, because whatever they play a minion, or if they destroy, if they Berry Blast it, it'll always make the Garg. So it really will be, again, like a 3/3 plus a Garg. That's actually, and control that turn. It's actually a pretty good use of 5-cost card, and again, you can also use Fireworks Zombie, or maybe Barrel of Deadbeards, I mean, to activate it. Again, very not useful card. You don't want to just throw this in the deck as a finisher because it's so unreliable. There's a couple decks where this is solid. I'll put this in C tier because, again, there are a couple decks where this is a very worthy, very powerful, competitive inclusion, but it's just not a lot of decks. All right, here's Hippity Hop. This has the main problem, again, of almost every Garg in this game. It just dies to Shamrock. It dies to all big removal. The little bit of eggs it throws makes it a little better, but not that much better. This usually is just a complete meme card, so if I would be counting for meme value, I'd probably put it higher, but because this is not a very good competitive card, like almost every Gargantuar in this game, I'll put that in D tier. And when we get into Imp Throwing Garg, I'm actually going to be putting this one for exactly the same reason, putting in F tier. But Fry, it has Pirate Synergy. This is not a good Pirate Synergy card. This is going to get removed before you get any value. But Fry, it throws the almighty Swabby into the Amphibious Lane. Great, wonderful. Nice solid F tier card. Definitely try to run that in your Swabby meme decks. But it's really outclassed, let's say, Hippity Hop with more attack and actually throws a good card, which is an egg, which can actually give you some value. The throwing Swabbies, I know they can go in the Amphibious Lane. I really, because Hippity Hop, I'm only putting Hippity Hop in D tier because it's a fun card. This is not a fun card. Really no business being in any deck ever. All right, here's Discotron. This is actually too expensive. I think at 5, this might be viable. Like, you can do Headhunter on 4. Discotron makes 3 dancing minions on turn 5. I think that would be fine. 6, it's just too expensive. It really is just too expensive. Also, when you have a 6-cost gravestone, I think this is, besides for Rodeo, the most expensive gravestone in the game. It dies to Gravebuster, which again is so much value. Even Blockbuster is such a huge value trade against Discotron. Its stats are good. It puts a few minions. This would only be good in dancing decks. This is really not even good in dancing decks. I'll try to maybe bring this in a deck, but it would only be for fun. It wouldn't be competitive at all. Because every once in a while this is amazing. I'll put it in D, but this could easily be an F. All right, Gas Giant. This is another card inside that Boogaloo Splash deck I keep making a reference to. This is a decent finisher. The problem with this is that it's circumstantial, because if you play this as a 6-cost 5/5 and there's not a good plant on the field to stick this in front of, it's really not a good card. Because again, 6-cost 5/5, the plants will be able to make a turn 6 play that is much stronger than a 5/5. So if they happen to have exactly the right plants, it can destroy that plant, plus do an extra 5 damage to phase, plus control the rest of the field. Usually 6 cost, again, used as a control card is very, very unreliable, because it's a zombie that only controls, again, it only controls what they played on turn 5. It only controls the turn before, does not control what they played next turn. I guess the little splash this does will control what they play on turn 6, but what are they going to play on turn 6 that dies to 1 damage? Almost nothing. Again, you can use this with Final Mission. It really wasn't a good idea in that deck when we tried that. It's useful in that freaking Splash Boogaloo deck just as a finisher, because you're just putting so many Gargs in the field that they run out of big removal. I think it's a little more useful than some of the C-cost cards, than some of the D-cost cards. I'll put this in C because of maybe just that one deck. All right. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, here's Garg's Feast. The problem with this card, this actually teleports in the 3 zombies. So it doesn't have dry, doesn't have like any of the problem that the Gargantuars in this game have. The problem is it costs 11. This used to cost 12. There is this fun deck, you can find these on YouTube, where you either are control Boogaloo, where you control until turn 11, which again, any plant deck is going to be able to beat you by turn 11, so it's very unreliable. You can also do this with Professor Brainstorm, where you're ramping up to this card, which maybe makes you able to play it a little bit faster. This is really not a competitive card at all. Even Control Boogaloo, again, it's not a very high tier deck. The problem with Garg Feast too is that it has a lot of weaknesses. The weaknesses of this are going to be Dandelion King, which again, if you're controlling and trying to play Guard Feast, Dandelion King will make you only have 10 health, and they're going to be able to burst you down really quickly. Brainana is a great answer to this. Even Forget-Me-Nuts on turn 11, if they suspect you have a Guard Feast in hand, which they'll usually know by then that you're going for Guard Feast since you haven't done anything for the first 10 turns of the game. They play one Forget-Me-Nuts, then you are out of here. Even the Guard, when you pull this off, it's very good because two of your Guards will usually be hitting phase. The other one will usually be controlling your hero. This can make a Zombot, which is amazing. It's very fun. I'm actually going to give this value. As you can see, it says it used to cost 12 here on the icon. I'm not even going to value this as a competitive card. I'm going to stick this right in. It's not good. Competitively, this would go in D because it's really not a good competitive card, but it is. You can pull this off in decks, and it is a fun card. Even in terms of I'm factoring all of it's fun, I could put it in B. Should I put it in B just because it's fun? Controversial? I'm going to put it in C. Solid C card. Again, if you're going for fun, it would be in B tier or even in A tier. And if you're going for competitive, it would be somewhere down here. So I'm just going to kind of average it out and put it in C. Again, just way too expensive. You know, what if Guard Feast costs 10 or even 9? Let's say Guard Feast was a 9 cost card. Would it be too good? I don't think it would be too good at 10. So I do think I really would love this card to cost 10. I don't know about 9. Is it not controlling to turn 9? I think it's not that hard to get to turn 9. Would this be too powerful of a finisher, even though it's weak to Brainana, weak to Still Forget-Me-Nuts, weak to a lot of other things? I don't know if this would be broken at 9. I definitely would be fine at 10. So make this card cost 10, please. Anyway, guys, that was the crazy tier list. Once again, let me know in the comment section below what you would like to see me do next. I think this turned out really, really well. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace. This is Fry.
A few moments later.
Alright, guys. I'm after the tier list and I'm changing my mind. This is going in C. This actually is better in more decks than I thought. I remember we put this in the Pirate deck, the Infinity. It's called like the Smoked Fish deck or something like that. And using this in a deck where you have a lot of gravestones to absorb the Gravebusters with your Pirates and your Flame Face. Then you stick this on turn 5 and makes all your strike through cards with the Flame Face do more damage. It actually is good. It really is a decent finisher. Again, still not one of the better cards in this game. Someone just sent me another deck where similar sort of strategy where you're playing it in a tempo deck as a finisher. In the right deck, this could be decent. I'm going to put it in C. D was actually not fair. There, I corrected myself. Thank you guys for the input, though. I really appreciate all the input the chat gives. I'll include that in the video.